Hi, English 1 students, Professor Dean Ramser, and I'm going to go over a few chapters from Writer's Reference. I have a Kindle version, and I'm going to upload or open that up on the screen. Great, okay, so here it is. So I thought I'd go over this. This may be helpful, hopefully. So let's take a look at, okay, first page, cover page, and sort of a main menu of items. It's a fair amount. I know you can buy this Kindle version, which is what I did, but you can also rent it as well. So the layout is kind of nicer on this newer edition. So let's go to chapter 1. Chapter 1 is composing and revising. So how can I get started on college paper? How can I make my thesis stronger? Why is it so important to revise my writing? Can I get better at it? The revising of an essay is so critical. I can't emphasize it enough. An essay should go through probably 3, 4, 5 drafts. And those drafts could be major, where you're rearranging paragraphs. They could be more detailed, where you're looking at supporting sentences in each paragraph. Are they related to the topic? You have the in-text citations formatted correctly according to MLA. And then probably the last one is the final sort of finishing touch would be looking at the sound of the language, and the best way to detect that is to read it aloud. And reading aloud, you can also hear some of the nuance of the language, but also the structure as well. So revising an essay is critical. I recommend doing it at least 3 or 4 times. You can go to the Writing Center there at the college in Susanville and meet with someone. You can also go online and use that source as well. So you have in Chapter 1, C1 planning. Let's open that up. There's a checklist for assessing your writing. Subject, purpose, audience, genre, length, and format, and deadlines. Explore your subject. Templates are a very helpful way of starting discussion, starting research, starting a paper. There's a template here. Listening is very important. That's why I recommend that you read your essay aloud. Reading and annotating text. I strongly encourage you, if you can, annotate the text. If the book is rented, then you can't mark it up. But otherwise, I recommend doing some sort of annotating of the text. That's where you write in the margins something about the text that you've read. Notes highlighting keywords, significant passages you can quote and insert in your own writing. Brainstorming is just, making a list or, scatter of ideas about what you've read. I also strongly recommend keeping a journal. In this class, we're not, but in my previous classes, I had each student keep a journal, and they would submit weekly pages from that journal. It was called the Hip Spice Fix It Journal. So maybe I'll bring that back at some point, but I strongly encourage keeping a journal, a weekly journal, on what you've read and what you're writing, and it'll help you as you come back to it years later when you're in your senior year of your undergraduate or going to graduate school, see how you progressed as a student, as a writer. Okay, draft and revise. I sort of referenced the thesis statement before a few times already. Here it says draft a working thesis, which means that your thesis will be revised as you further develop your essay. Okay, revising a thesis. Some common problems. I went over this in previous recordings. You need an outline to reference the outline, and recordings is also part of the requirement for essay 3 through 6. Okay, so here's one way of doing an outline. You have Roman numerals 1, 2, 3, and then subcategories A, B, C. So this one has 6 sections, right? This is 4, 5, and 6 in Roman numerals. Your introduction needs to have a hook, needs to have background information about the essay that you plan on writing, and needs to have a thesis, which is your main argument, and what you're going to do in your essay to support that argument. Okay, so here's an example of an introductory paragraph. The hook is, should the government enact laws to regulate healthy eating choices? Okay, so the hook could be a question, could be a statement, could be a fact, could be something that you notice that is contrary or contradictory and yet true. Drafting the body of the essay, this is where the outline comes in handy. You can sort of see how you're going to plot your argument. Plot meaning that you're going step by step to make your points in your argument. I'm not adding for visuals in these essays, although you certainly could. If you do add a visual, which is a graph, a chart, a picture, make sure that you cite it correctly. And this could be helpful. For essay 3, I can't really see you using a visual, but you're more than welcome to do that. Just make sure you cite it correctly. Conclusion is not only a summary of an essay, but it's also predictive of what you think the argument or the discussion will look like in the future. An essay is adding to the discussion about a topic. It's not the end of that discussion. You're just adding your opinion to it. So a conclusion is summarizing what you've done or what you hope to accomplish in your essay, but also what you think the discussion will look like in the next draft, so to speak, the next discussion. Okay, full circle. Okay, writing paragraphs. Paragraphs has a topic sentence, supporting sentences, and a transition sentence. I've gone over this in previous recordings. The main point. Okay, make paragraphs coherent. Reading aloud will really help you for that. You can see here how it's sort of structured. You got a chronological order, first, second, and finally. Be aware of key words that are significant to your topic and reference them sparingly, but reference them so that the reader gets hooked into the sound of your essay by recognizing key words that are repeated. Different ways of doing that, parallel structures. That's pretty effective. Okay. Be aware of transition words, first, next, later, but, yet. But yet are ways of pivoting in the flow of the paragraph. So your topic sentence could be looking at one thing and then you want to pivot to something more specific. Yet and but are ways of moving from that direction and going in a slightly different direction. Here's some common transitions, really helpful to look at and be aware of and make note of them. I recommend that you print out things like this: common transitions, active verbs, prepositional phrases, signal phrases, thesis statements that are well constructed, starting with a subordinate although. If you have them laid out, printed and laid out, then it's easy for you to look at them and use them when you're writing. One of the challenges with writing is we don't have access to everything that our memory has contained, has stored. But if it's printed out in front of you, it'll help. These are ways of developing the paragraphs. You got illustration, narration, description, process, compare, contrast, analogy, cause and effect, classification, definition. And each one is an effective strategy, depends on what your argument is and what your topic is. And illustrate is to show. Narrate is like storytelling. Description is getting in the very descriptive details. Process is the sort of 1, 2, 3 of how it's made or constructed. Compare contrast is obviously what it means, but like the Venn diagram where you got overlapping on things. Yeah, there's a Venn diagram that I keep in front of my desk. There you go. To remind me of the want and the need, and when they overlap, that's where it's good. So the compare contrast is the Venn diagram where you got overlapping circles. Analogy is something that, like, using similes like, as. Cause and effect is when something happens as a result of something else. Classification is how it's organized in sort of a grand scheme of things. And definition is also critical. Sometimes we don't agree on the definition of a word or a phrase or an idea. So it's helpful to clarify that. That's part of your argument. Goes into more detail about what each one is. Reviewing, revising, and editing. We'll start doing some peer review, perhaps with this essay, but certainly with essays 4 through 4, 5, and 6. Get your classmates a chance to see your writing and give you a chance to see your classmates' writing. We'll get into the peer review organization and how it's important to be constructive and specific and not simply flattering. Revising the log, okay. This is pretty good. Annotating with comment specific. And that's a very good example. When we do peer review. Okay. Let's go here. Academic reading and writing. Look at a few of these things. Reading critically means looking for things that are strong, supportive, connected. How to read like a writer. Review any notes that you make. Ask the what, the why, and the how. Think about those 5 W's and the how. Outline a text for main ideas. Summarize. This is where your note taking comes in handy. I strongly encourage you to make notes of what you've read. Be aware of their deeper critical analysis of something. The rhetorical situation, rhetorical context does matter. We all have our own unique perspective on something based on who we are, where we're at in our life, what age we are, what ethnicity, race, cultural, language skills we have, our own specific talents and strengths and weaknesses. That all affects how we are critical of something. Here's a pretty good sample essay. Move on to thinking like a researcher. Okay, can study, right? Examine, make notes. Can make a list, the pros and cons of a topic. There should be a website, a web link on the library page about pro-con or something like that, that allows you to look at a topic and has highlighted very specific pros and cons about a topic. That might be one way of starting a conversation about something that you want to research. Especially essay 3 is looking at one essay and what kind of argument it's making. Map out a search strategy, think about keywords. We'll get into using the library search engine. Probably not yet, although I may make a video about that and then post it, like I'm doing for this one. Okay. That. Emily formatting. See if we can get in-text citation. Okay, this is in-text citation MLA, comma, 2021. There's some examples here, page number in parentheses, author's name is highlighted. When introducing an author, you introduce first name and last name, and then thereafter just the last name. And there's on the works cited page, which you will need for essay 3 through 6. Okay. Integrating a source. There's 3 ways of doing it. You can summarize the main points of this source that you're referencing. You could paraphrase it, meaning that you're going to take the words that that author wrote or said, and you're going to rephrase them in your own language. Perhaps the source is very technical or specific, and you want to make it more palatable, more understandable for your audience. So you can paraphrase, and you can also do a direct quote. I could do a direct quote. Here's a direct quote. Quote, slippery slope thinking. That's the page number where that quote came from. A signal phrase. I strongly recommend that you print out signal phrases. You can Google them. Have a list of 20 or 30 that are pretty helpful and have them printed out next to you when you're writing. Argues is better than says. Says is sort of vague. You want to have a single verb, an active verb that does something that we can sort of visualize it. Okay, so chapter 1 is composing and revising. Chapter 2 is academic reading and writing. Chapter 3 is research writing. We kind of touched on that and touched a little bit about MLA. Anyway, so the reason I'm going over this is that I know some of you don't have a textbook yet. Hopefully you'll have it soon, if not already. But this Kindle version is pretty helpful. I like the way it's easy to toggle between pages. So let me stop share there. So I'm going to post this online today. Today is Wednesday, and the reason is because Friday I'm tied up with something, so I probably cannot do an office hour on Friday. I'll try and get in maybe on Sunday, Saturday or Sunday if I can. Anyway, so that's it for today. Thank you so much for your time. Hopefully this has been helpful, and take care. Bye.